A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
It's lights out and away we go. It's a great start from Sebastian Vettel. Wing come up the inside. McLaughlin gives it to Spencer. They run, but the Red Bull Racing man has got through. The champion's done the job. They're all gone. They're all gone. Tander's off. McLaughlin's off. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
Well, good evening and welcome everyone to the final round of the Automobilista Australia or AMS Oz Formula 3 Championship. Tonight, a champion will be crowned and we will bring you all the action. Your ARW commentary team is in the house to bring you tonight's broadcast in conjunction with our broadcast partners, Short Shift Podcast. Nether here, and with me in the commentary box for the 2 race format tonight is Bagsy. How are you, Bagsy?
Not bad, Nether. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Had a good day watching Le Mans 24 Hour, so it should be a good finale to my day to see a champion crowned in Formula 3. But before we dive into that situation, we will have a look at the championship points coming into tonight. And have you got the points in front of you there? Because it is very tight at the top.
It is very tight at the top, but from what we've heard so far, it's going to be a less exciting than usual end to the championship, unfortunately. We've got Greg Nangle in first on 125 points, and Heath Dixon very close behind, 121, only 4 points behind. But Heath Dixon not participating in this race, unfortunately, so he's watching Le Mans apparently, so it's very unfortunate. There is one person who could potentially also win the championship, Lewis Wedding. He's on 90 points, 35 back, but he will need Nangle to DNF from both races and to win both races, it's a very difficult proposition, unfortunately. Matt Schwass and Luke round out the top 5 on 67 and 65 points respectively.
Yes, and then your the balance of your point scorers are there on the screen. So there's still a couple of positions that could change hands tonight in the lower rankings. We did touch on the fact that Heath Dixon is unfortunately not here tonight, so that robs us of a bit of a... we were hoping to build up to a climactic finish for this championship because it was going to be the closest championship currently running, but unfortunately for us, somewhat of an anticlimax. But Lewis Wedding potentially can unseat Heath Dixon from second place if he was to score both wins. As you said, he could also potentially unseat Nangle if Nangle was to DNF, but he would certainly need a miracle in both races for that to occur. The most likely scenarios tonight, looking at the point standings there on your screen, is that if Lewis does win both races, and Greg only needs to circulate and finish race 1 for himself to be crowned champion, but if Lewis then does finish both races in first place, he will move into the second spot on the overall point standings. Matt Schwass and Luke both around tonight. Luke being a late entry into the service, so those guys will be going at it for 4th and 5th. And David Keane and Corey Ott not far out of that battle. Corey Ott actually making his return to racing in Formula 3 tonight, having missed the last 2 rounds. So it'd be good to see how he gets on.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Also, just to note that if all Lewis Wedding needs to do is follow Nangle home in second to get the championship second place, the runners-up position, because it's 17 points for second place. He's only 31 points behind Heath Dixon, so a total of 34 for 2 second places will get him into second.
That is true. Thank you very much for the correction. Now, a quick look at the circuit. Well, most of you know this circuit anyway. It's the usual first round of the Formula 1 series. It's Albert Park, so we've got 16 turns. It's a 2 times 11 lap race tonight. Normally we get about 15 laps on the circuit, but given this is a longer circuit than usual, it's an 11 lap race for race 1 and race 2. Runs in a clockwise direction. And you can see there the rest of the parameters for tonight's race. Well, it's about time we jumped over and had a bit of a look at what's going on just as practice is coming to a close. Oh, as we look on the board there. It actually says we've got 6 and a bit minutes remaining. The man at the top of the screens at the moment is Greg Nangle. Johnny and Lewis Wedding not that far away, so here's Nangle just on an outlap at the moment at the back end of practice, and just looking at the times there, you can see he's only ahead of Johnny and Wedding by about a tenth and a half respectively each. Matt Williams in the other team car to Greg Nangle's car, the FCR cars as we like to call them, also not that far away, so within half a second. So a few tight battles up and down the field early in practice, but it is only practice, and the points are not awarded for practice.
Yeah, definitely not. I'm sure some people would be happy if they were, because it would make it a lot easier on them, not having to worry about all those pesky other drivers around trying to take positions off them. But it's a good reason we give them out during the race.
Yes, it certainly does, and as you rightly pointed out, you don't want pesky drivers in, and it is a closed server tonight, so the word has gone out to the AMS Oz guys that anybody who has not competed before in the Formula 3 Championship will not be permitted to race tonight because of the championship implications, which is a fair call, and I think a very, very smart call from the organisers, as we've just seen Lewis Wedding surpass Nangle at the top. So Wedding, the first man in practice to hit the 48s.
Yeah, it was a good call, but it was a call made when we thought there was going to be a close battle in the championship. But now that's fallen away, it's a bit of a shame, and has sort of only serves to reduce the field. But there's not much we can do about that now. No,
unfortunately not. You're right, the call was made with the expectation in mind that it was going to be a two-man fight at the front for the championship. But given that points positions for each of the drivers tonight can still mean some shuffling up and down the order, as we rightly pointed out, there's a few battles that are going to be decided tonight, not just first, second and third, but also fourth, fifth and sixth potentially are also in their own little scrap, and we'll have to see how that pans out over the course of tonight's proceedings. As you pointed out, it's 20 points for a win and it's 17 points for second, and it works down accordingly from there.
Yeah, it's also for those who may be missing out on Le Mans to listen to myself and Heather, which I'm sure there are many of you. Might give updates on towards the end of Le Mans if people so desire.
Yeah, I think that might not be a bad idea actually for those that are tuning in on both or watching it away from a Foxtel box at the moment. As we only had about 2 and a bit hours remaining when I think both of us turned off, or especially when I turned off, and be interested to see what the situation is there with Fernando Alonso right up there for Toyota, so close to the finish.
Yeah, Toyota historically quite good at the end of Le Mans races, so we'll see how that pans out.
And I think we say that with a bit of tongue-in-cheek as well, don't we, given some of the recent history that Toyota have had with their luck at that famous circuit.
Just slightly, but at the moment both Toyotas have such a lead over the next LMP1 car that I believe they can park it for about 50 minutes and still win the race. So with an hour and 50 minutes to go, they can probably afford some issues, to be honest.
You're probably right. But let's leave that chat for when we have a few breaks in proceedings, because at the moment Nangle's actually now slipped down to third on the practice standings. Matt Williams has actually found some pace. Matt Williams has actually just gone back to the garage. Was complaining of a little bit of rear grip earlier on in the practice session, but as the rubber goes down it probably looks a little bit better, and it's probably come to the FCR driver. But a little bit of rear wing necessary to keep the rear end planted through some of these traction zones. I mean, the one that they all seem to be struggling with early on was the final turn 16, where it's very, very tricky to get the nose of the car in and keep a nice steady line and then plant the power down as well. The back end just wants to step away, and it's a common sight for the Formula 1 drivers as well that they lose it through that turn. It always throws up its challenge.
Yeah, obviously his car is very area dependent, and with this track, it's sort of the way it's laid out. It's not exactly conducive to overtaking either. Being so area dependent, because you get in behind someone, you can easily get caught out in the wash through these high speed corners. Yes,
it's very possible that it's very, very easy to lose your way around this circuit if you get an overtaking move wrong, or you need that aero to keep that car absolutely planted, as Nangle's done. Finishes his practice run. Only got a handful of guys out on the circuit at the moment. A couple still sitting stationary in the garage as we watch Luke just runs wide at the exit there of turn number 4, and it actually takes a bit of curb getting back onto the circuit there, so a little bit of a chaotic re-entry. But here is the man who's currently actually he's one of 2 men to break through the minute 49 barrier and into the 48s, Lewis Wedding, and we spoke about him earlier on in the broadcast, that he's certainly looking to win at least one of these 2 races and certainly give himself a boost to try and overtake Heath Dixon for that 2nd place, and it makes the job just that little bit easier. It's still a large gap, but it makes that job just that little bit easier knowing that he's not here, and all he needs is 2 second places effectively to leapfrog the former series leader.
Yes, and I've just been reliably informed that any Heath hate mail that you happen to have for him not showing up to make this interesting championship battle can be sent to goofball.antics@gmail.com, and it will surely be discarded. But, if it makes you feel better, go ahead and do that.
Not that we encourage that sort of behaviour. As Wedding comes down to the line, he was only on an outlap anyway, but just a little bit of last-minute running before qualifying 1 for race 1 tonight. A little bit of a moment there across the grass, but only a couple of drivers left on track, just finishing off their laps, and we will be into qualifying shortly. So 9 runners in tonight's proceedings, so it's a little bit of a smaller server than what we've had in the past as we get set to decide the grid for race 1.
Yeah, it should be an exciting qualifying session with Wedding, Matt Williams or Greg Nangle all potentially a shot at a pole position, but you can't discount the likes of Johnny and Cameron and Jamie Snow, who is back after a fairly long absence. Actually, I believe he has missed. If I just find.
He's missed a few races, Jamie Snow. His first appearance in a long time back into the series was in the GT3s last weekend at Sebring, and it was good to see him back. Unfortunately, went a lap down through some timing glitches and didn't finish as high up as probably was expecting to finish, but nonetheless, it's good to see him making an appearance. As we watch Wedding coming down the pit lane here, Weaving getting his tyres in order, and he's the first man at the bottom of the pit lane. Here comes, I think that's Luke there, and all the other guys starting to finally make their way out of the pits. As the session goes green, and sorry, that was Corey Ott we were looking at before, I do apologise. So it's Corey Ott with the number 9. As we said before, seeing him come back into the series for the first time in 3 races. His last race for this was the Silverstone round, Northamptonshire, as we promoted it on the broadcast at least a month and a half ago now. But good to see him back. And he's second on the road at the moment. The man, and there's Matt Schwass. So Matt Schwass is battling away with the likes of Ott and Keane and Luke and Co for 4th, 5th and 6th in that mid-pack in the championship. But let's have a look for our first man on the road, which is Lewis Wedding, as he comes down to the chicane over the back part of the circuit. And he's now on his way to the end of Sector 2 on his outlap. This is a very quick part of the circuit. If you get this chicane right, it is an awesome feeling. You can flick the car in here and carry a bit of speed, but you don't want to take too much curb and unsettle the car. And he's only on an outlap, but you can see he's already pushing very, very hard to get those tyre temperatures up and get the pressures up. And a little bit too hard, if you can probably see there. He controlled the back end slide rather nicely. And now he's coming up to the final 2 turns on this circuit, and he will then commence his first flying lap of the qualifying session. Well, Let's jump on board with Lewis Wedding. Above the driver's head, as it races down into turn 1. You can see the gears and the speeds there on the dashboard. Down to 3rd gear for this turn. Now sweeps through turn 2. It's curving straight on the way up to turn number 3. It's one of the heavy braking zones on the circuit. And now up to turn 4. And sweeping through turn 5. This is a high-speed corner. Plenty of curb. Nicely judged. Under the bridge, and now up to turn 6 and 7. And now we're on to the back part of the circuit. This right-hander is turn 8. And now down to turn 9 and 10, the Clark chicane. A little bit squirrely on the curb there for Lewis. On the left is the hill. A lot of the Australian fans like to present themselves during the Grand Prix weekend. The lake on the right-hand side. And now through this high-speed section, turns 11 and 12. Lewis carrying a little bit more curb on the inside of turn 11 there. And now heads down Queen's Road on the left-hand side of the circuit. Hard braking zone for turn number 13. 14, the right-hander. Up under the bridge. Turn 15, the probably the slowest corner on the circuit. But very hard to get right. And Wedding's gone wide, so Wedding just losing a little bit there, pushing a little bit too much. And this is turn 16, so unfortunately for Lewis, he's ruined that lap by virtue of going wide at the second last turn. Just carried a little bit too much and gone the power a bit too early, and his lap time's a 51.3, so he's certainly capable of a lot better than that, Bagsy. As we might have lost Bagsy temporarily here. But we'll just stay with Wedding as he tries to negotiate turn 3. And now on the run up to turns 4 and 5. And we'll have a look and see who else is posting some times at the moment. The 7th man on the road is Matt Schwass, so we'll see if we can pick up Matt Schwass. And Matt Schwass is in the pit lane, so he's had a moment on that final turn. So, as we called a little bit earlier, a couple of guys struggling for getting through turn number 16. And Nangle's now posted the quickest time with a 49.8, but the guys were well into the 48s before practice finished. We'll stay with Jamie Snow as he navigates turn 14 and now going through 15, and he gets it quite nicely turned in for turn 15 and manages to hold it nicely to 16, but he rubs the wall on the exit of turn 16, so that'll cost him a little bit of time. He didn't want to go that far wide, and he comes to the line and he actually goes to the top with a 49.8, so it did cost him probably a couple of tenths of a second there, but he still managed to find his way to the top of the pile. But we look a bit further down the field as Wedding is coming round the last turn now, and that's a much better line from Wedding. He's seeing the timing screens alight, and that's the kind of line we'd like people to take through turn number 16. Wedding charges to the line, and this will be in the 48s, and it's a 48.5. But Johnny, just ahead of him, actually managed to set a time that was a 48.2. So Johnny pumping in the time there very, very quickly. As Greg now looking to improve his time. He's down to the turn 13, 14 complex of corners, and he was looking the goods as well for a little while. But has just dropped away in the Sector 2 split. Let's see if this moves him up the order at all. Safely navigates turn 16 and now has the run to the line. And Corey Ott just behind Nangle on the road. So Nangle goes third. We'll see if we can pick up what Corey Ott's time is as Ott comes to the line, and he does a 49.1. So good enough to jump up into fourth at the moment, just ahead of Jamie Snow. And now he presses on for another lap. Matt Williams yet to come out of the pits, and Luke also yet to set a representative time. As Cameron Costa, or Cameron on here, comes to the line. So he's going to start his first flying lap. Had a couple of little indiscretions on his outlaps. He's through turn 1. Johnny actually going even faster out the back end of the circuit, so let's see if we can... And no, he's aborted that lap. But Nangle's also put down a very, very respectable Sector 1 time as he heads now down to this chicane in the back part of the circuit. A little bit of a drift there, but gets it nicely turned. And now heading up to the turn 11-12 chicane. Just having a few technical dramas at the moment, so with a bit of luck we will sort them out very, very shortly. You back there, Bagsy? Have you got it? You got your technical? We got a few, I think we had a few technical dilemmas. You got yourself sorted there.
Yes, I'm definitely back and able to communicate.
Thank God for that. I'm not too sure what happened there, but I didn't hit any buttons that I was supposed to hit, so maybe something a little technical gremlin. But as we watch Greg Nangle coming to the line, he now gets into the 48s. He's done a 48.7, but still only good for third provisionally. Johnny's been doing a rather nice job at the moment. He's got 0.3 of a second on Lewis Wedding, with Ott and Snow rounding out the top 5. The 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th place gentlemen are yet to set themselves a time. Matt Williams has been sitting in the pits for a while and hasn't ventured out at all, so I'm not sure what his plan is there as Cameron pops up there and goes into the 6th quickest time, just behind Jamie Snow. Let's have a look through our order and see if we can find anybody else on circuit at the moment. So Matt Schwass, he's fighting for the mid-pack positions of that championship, and this lap time is going to be a bit slower than probably what he's capable of, but he's obviously made a mistake somewhere around the lap. So his set's a 56.0, so he'll have to press on and see if he can improve that time. He's got 5 minutes and 50 seconds remaining. The only other gentleman we've been speaking of not set a time is Matt Williams and Luke, and they are currently sat up in the pits.
Yeah, also Rambo, who missed the qualifying session, and the server is closed when the qualifying session starts, so he'll be coming back in warm-up if that's possible for him. Yeah,
he will be able to make it back into the warm-up, and that's an interesting point you raised, because to do with some of the issues when people join the server where the game can potentially freeze a little bit, we have closed qualifying on this server and all series servers in actual fact, and it's just to prevent anyone coming in and disrupting another person's lap. So Rambo, unfortunately, if he does make it back in for warm-up, which it will be open for warm-up, he will have to start rear of grid.
Yes, and we mentioned before about the Toyotas being excellent at the end of the Le Mans race as well. The numbers, just for those people who are wanting an update on that, the number 7 Toyota, which is currently in 2nd place, is currently going quite slow down the Mulsanne straight. So some sort of issue there. Let's see what happens with that.
Well, not good news for Fernando Alonso, because he was in the number 7.
He's number 8.
He's number 8, is he? I thought he was in the number 7. It's maybe shows how much attention I've been paying to the Le Mans 24 hours for the last few hours.
I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's in the number 8.
Well, we shall see how that shakes out, as Johnny's doing his best here to improve his own lap time, but he's 2/10 off at the Sector 2 split, and he's been chased by Corey Ott on the road. As Johnny navigates turn 13, and Corey Ott navigates as well, but just puts a couple of wheels on the dirt there, but no harm done. We've seen a few people come unstuck here at turns 15 and 16, but no such problems for Johnny. He gets those 2 turns navigated very, very nicely indeed, and he will not improve on his time. In actual fact, he lost time through Sector 3, so unable to make any further improvement on his own time with 3.5 minutes to go. It is Johnny from Wedding, from Nangle and Ott, and then Jamie Snow rounds out the top 5. And Wedding just moves to the top now, so where did that come from? Lewis Wedding found tons of time and skips to the top of the standings by 3 3.5 tenths, or almost 3.5 tenths. So considering he was 3.5 or 3 tenths behind, he's found 6.5 tenths somewhere out on circuit. That's a phenomenal time from Wedding.
It was a purple final sector from Wedding. It was a whole second faster than Johnny's best final sector.
Yeah, so Johnny's best final sector was a 42.8 and Wedding's found it in a 41.8, so getting it absolutely hooked up. And he's actually quicker again here, Wedding. He's found a 10.5 in the first sector, so he's dialed in now and he's hunting time all the time. So Wedding, the only man now to dip into the 47s. Coincidentally, the best time for the weekend was actually set by a driver who's unable to participate tonight. It was set by Andy Simpson earlier in the week with a 146.9. I don't know if we're going to get that close with only 2 and a bit minutes remaining, but that was a staggering time. So excluding that, Wedding is still a 10.5 up, and Wedding does currently hold the second best time overall for the race weekend, but by virtue of Andy not being able to participate, being a closed session, Wedding technically is top of the charts at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing that lap that Andy Simpson did. It's a shame he can't compete in this race because you feel
Wedding's lost it.
Loses it.
Wedding lost it. He took too much curb at turn number 15, and he had a bit of a lose there on his first flying lap, and he was a 10.5 up, and I can only assume that he could smell it. He wanted that improvement, but just couldn't make it happen. Now Nangle has also jumped Johnny. He's moved on to a 48.0. And he's only a 10.5 behind Wedding, but he's just over a 10.5 ahead of Johnny, as Nangle does a very, very good Sector 1. So up on his own PB, but 1200ths up on Wedding's Sector 1 time. And let's see if the Professor, as they like to call him, can push on and maintain that for the rest of this lap. Very, very clean driver, Greg, as he gets through the chicane there.
Interesting to say that Wedding's lap that he did, his best lap, was his first sector was only about half a tenth faster than Greg Nangle's, as Greg Nangle is now up by 2 tenths. He's had a much better middle sector there.
Yeah, he's found some time.
So it's all down to this final sector, which can be a bit difficult because especially coming into this corner here, you've got to really commit to it. You can't brake too much. If you don't brake enough, you're going to go wide into the gravel.
That's right, and he did that rather nicely, and he's done that turn beautifully as well. But this is the sector where Wedding was so strong when he set that 47.9, and Greg's had no problems negotiating turn 15 this time around, and nor 16, and he carries a fair bit of curb, and that's really nice. And it's all about this run to the line now. Is he going to find an answer for Wedding's time? He does! He lost a little bit of time in the Sector 3 to Wedding, but he's still a 10.5 clear and a 47.7, and the Professor storms to the top with the time expiring. So Greg's got another lap to go. Where's Lewis? And Lewis is in the garage, so Lewis has conceded. So Lewis has conceded, and Jamie Snow has moved up to 4th. Ott's currently 5th now, and Ott loses it off of the turn 12 exit and loses his front wing there. Cameron's still on a lap as well, so he's looking to see if he can improve his time as he comes down to the turn 9 and 10 chicane, but he's carried a bit too much speed there, and he's aborting that lap. Matt Schwass to the line. He improves to 6th, so Matt Schwass found 1.1 seconds on his PB. That's a good result for him. He moves up to 6th overall, knocking Cameron down to 7th. And Matt Williams and Luke did not set a time, and obviously Rambo not being able to make it back into server doesn't set a time either, so those guys are all going to have to start from the back. But the Professor comes good at exactly the right moment, I have to say, doesn't he, Bagsy?
Yeah, he definitely pulled out that lap at the perfect time. It's exactly when you want to do it, and because Wedding was in the pit lane, wasn't able to respond, mainly due to that crash in the final corner. He lost his rear wing, which meant he couldn't keep going and couldn't put in another lap, so it's very unfortunate for him, and he'll be ruining that.
Yeah, he certainly will, and Lewis was looking the goods for that last flying lap that we kept an eye on him for, but just losing it at turn 15. He had 10.5 in hand, and he probably just wanted to overcommitted a little bit too much to the exit of turn 15, and around it went. And unfortunately for Lewis, he'll start on the front row, which is nothing to be frowned upon, but not from the prime position.
So while we're starting warm-up, as we have Rambo rejoin us over here, so he'll be starting from the back of the grid. Another Le Mans update. The issue for the Toyota was they forgot to put fuel in the car at the pit stop, which is probably the most Toyota way to have an issue, to be honest. That's why they had to come back to the pit lane at very slow speed, because they had about a thimble worth of fuel left in the car.
Would have been running on hybrid power only. And it's an interesting point we talk about fuel, because we've had this happen a few times in the AMS Oz series as we see some of the guys coming out for warm-up. We've had numerous incidents over the whole entire series that get run, so not just F3 but also Supercars, Super Series, WEC as well. People find uncanny ways to lose races, and we've seen fueling dramas for Corey Ott in GT3, we've seen tyre dramas for Hobson and co in Supercars, we've seen accidents that could have been avoided. People find uncanny ways to lose races, so just to hear you say they didn't put any fuel in it, it completely staggers me as to how they can forget to do something like that. I mean, fuel's not going to be an issue tonight as long as they set the fuel accordingly, because you don't have to make pit stops, but still, massive oversight.
Yeah, as one of the other ARW commentators, Stairs, put it, he described Toyota as literally Brenton Hobson, finding every possible way to lose.
Well, Hobbo, I'm sure, is probably going to watch this at some point, and he'll probably have a chuckle to himself about that, because he's an easygoing guy, and he'll know that we mean no malice by any of that, but it's just a simple case of he's done it before, and it continues to happen to not just him, but to others as well. So, if you're watching, Hobbo, everybody from the RW commentary team congratulates you on your Super Series title being confirmed not that long ago.
Yeah, you feel he could have had a good run if he joined the F3 series as well, because he's quite a well-rounded racer. He's our champion-elect.
Yes, the champion-elect certainly is a worthy champion, and that Super Series, for those of you watching the broadcast, actually moving to a Mitsubishi Lancer format for Season 2. The Porsche Cup will be split off into its own series, and I believe that Hobson is going to carry the number 1 in the Lancer, or the revised Lancer series.
Yeah, I believe it's driver choice if they want to continue using their number or use the number 1.
Yes, each driver in the AMS Oz has a preferred number, but obviously the champion of each series has the choice of carrying number 1 or carrying their own number. This series, the Formula 3 series, going to be replaced by a Formula 1 1998 series, Bagsy, which we should probably have a talk about, because that's got quite a popular turnout at the moment. There's only about 4 cars out of a 20-odd car field available for anybody who does want to join that series, but it'll be it's an interesting mod choice. I mean, they didn't want to look at using a more recent form of the Formula 1 category, such as the 2017 or the ones with the halos, which I think unanimously most of the guys are disapprove of. But the 98 series mod, what's your thoughts on that?
It'll be pretty good. It's probably what people sort of our age, sort of mid-20s to mid to late 30s, would consider some of the part of the golden era of Formula 1 in terms of what the cars sounded like and what they looked like. They're much simpler looking cars than today's cars, and definitely much louder, with them having V8s or V10s or even V12s in the case of the Ferrari, I believe.
Yes, and one thing that stands out for me about that sort of time period is 98, with the battles between Hakkinen and Schumacher for those titles. That's what I'm probably looking forward to the most. It was right in that window where that's where things were close. I mean, nowadays some titles have just been a complete blowout after a certain period of time. When you think about, Sebastian Vettel's 4 titles, Lewis Hamilton running away with a championship at one stage. In the last 2 years have probably been pretty decent, with the likes of Hamilton and Vettel and Hamilton and Rosberg going for the title. But the 1998 sort of early 2000 era was the last time we properly saw some really close contested World Championship battles. And that's what I like the most about that mod, is that it delivered some staggeringly good racing.
I think you're being a bit too harsh on some of the more recent years, because just off the top of my head, even though Vettel did win 4 on the trot, 2010 and 2012 both went down to the final race, and especially 2010 had 4 people with a mathematical chance of winning going into the final race, and Vettel wasn't even the favourite there. He was the 3rd favourite and managed to win the race. And especially some of the early 2000s with Schumacher and Ferrari being way out in front weren't exactly the most exciting. But I do agree that that year of sort of the late 90s, before the Ferrari dominance, was quite good with Benetton and winning with Schumacher and Hakkinen with McLaren. It was definitely a good time to be watching Formula One.
It definitely was. And we should point out too that the mod that is being used, there are no custom liveries in that particular mod as well. The cars on the grid will be the actual liveries from the 1998 season. The only changes allowed are the helmets for the drivers, should they wish to change them. Otherwise, it's nominate the preferred car that you wish to be in, and that's your car for the season. They're actually going to run a Formula One style calendar as well, so expect them to be running the likes of Albert Park and Shanghai and those sorts of circuits that appeared on the F1 calendar in those years. Not sure if we'll do the whole entire calendar, but it's certainly going to be a very, very popular series. And I believe Stairs is going to be potentially broadcasting and commentating on those series, and I've just, after talking to him, I think he can't wait to sink his teeth into that.
Yeah, he's a passionate F1 fan, is Stairs, and he'll be very happy to be able to commentate some F1 races. I believe you're going to be competing, are you not?
Yes, I'm competing in the Benetton alongside Michael Ford. So Michael Ford's a Pro A ranked driver, and even though Brock says I'm Pro B, I'm technically unranked because I haven't raced enough races. So that'll be good to have some experience to lean on as well. So since I don't do a lot of racing, but speaking of the racing, the warm-up time has expired, and we now wait for our cars to grid up and take a formation lap before the start of race 1. So, end of race 1, we'll give you a points standings update, if we can, to let you know who is where and what has to happen in order for positions to be decided. But it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. We expect that as long as Greg circulates in this race and doesn't blow an engine or do anything to cause himself to have a DNF, he should, in theory, wrap up the title after race number 1.
Yep, all he has to do is finish the race and he will be our Formula 3 champion, because you get 6 points for 10th place, and 10th is the lowest he can finish if he's still on the track. Of course, if he doesn't finish the race, he doesn't get any points, and that'll be an important distinction.
That's right. So we're just waiting for the last few guys to make it onto the grid. The man in second spot, Lewis Wedding, probably just double checking a few things, and there he is. So we have all 10 cars on the grid as we commence the formation lap, and Bagsy, let's go through the order.
Yep, first is Greg Nangle with that excellent lap right at the death in qualifying. He will lead the grid, and as we mentioned just before, just needs to finish this race, but obviously he'll want to finish the championship by winning the race. Second, Lewis Wedding. He had quite good qualifying, but many mistakes, and so that cost him the chance to be able to get the pole position. But the front row start, as we have sort of come to expect from him. Johnny in third had an excellent lap. Was just beaten in the last few minutes of qualifying. They've generally got very good race pace in these cars, so hopefully he'll be able to challenge the front two. Jamie Snow, back after a 6-race hiatus. It's good to see him back in the field. He is also one who could trouble the front guys. Corey Ott, another guy who's very fast and who has missed the last 4 races. He's had 2 podiums so far out of the 4 races he's competed in, so look for him to potentially come through the field as well. Matt Schwass in 6th, fourth place in the championship, sorry. He's got Luke only 2 points behind him in the championship, so that'll be a close battle that we'll keep you informed of too. Cameron, he's only had one race in this series in the previous round at Laguna Seca. He placed 5th and 10th in the 2 races, so he's just here filling out the numbers, but he's definitely a capable driver and could definitely push up through the field. Luke, we mentioned before, starting from 8th, has to get past Schwass to beat him, basically. Whoever finishes ahead in both races will be the person who takes 4th place. And Rambo didn't make the grid in 9th, so he'll be starting from the pit lane. And then 10th is Matt Williams, who has a grid penalty after an incident in Laguna Seca.
Okay, well that explains why Matt Williams didn't take to the qualifying grid, so he's starting from the back by virtue of a penalty overhanging from Laguna Seca. And is that just for the race 1, Bagsy, or is it for both races?
As far as I know, it's just for race 1.
Okay, so we should expect to see Matt out there having a qualifying run in the next race. And Rambo has dropped out of the server, so obviously whatever gremlins he's having, he is the reason why he not only didn't make it into the server for qualifying, but also is not going to take the start by the look of things. Actually, I think he was on the grid, to be honest with you, Bagsy. I think we did see 10 cars on the grid, so I dare say that maybe some internet or technical dramas for Rambo. So that's disappointing. He unfortunately will not be able to make it back in for this race.
Yeah, so our grid of 10 is now whittled down to 9, which is one less person for our pole sitter Greg Nangle to worry about. We're seeing Wedding just lighting up his tyres there, and Nangle is going to have to wait a very long time, despite there being a small field, because Wedding's been holding up the field a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit of mind games, and Wedding actually angling his car towards Greg as well. So this is something. This is something we haven't seen a lot of in the Formula 3 series. As Matt's got to move forward here because of by virtue of where Rambo qualified. So the lights, as we wait for them, you can just see in the corner here, and we are away for the penultimate race of the series. And Wedding got a wonderful start from the inside of the grid, but Jamie Snow got an excellent start as well, and Nangle's down to 2nd. It's 3 wide as they head into turn 1. Wedding is through, and so too is Jamie Snow as Nangle goes a little bit wide, and Corey Ott rounds Nangle up on the outside as well. So the Professor is down to 4th. Wedding got a wonderful launch, and now he's chased by Jamie Snow down to turn number 3, and Ott's still defending from Greg Nangle. Matt Williams has made an excellent start as well from the back row of the grid, but as they come through turns 3 and 4, and now about to attack turn 5 and head up towards the back part of the circuit, it's Lewis Wedding extending his gap. Corey Ott's not letting Jamie Snow get away, and as we keep an eye on here, Ott having a look to the inside of Snow and makes a wonderful pass at turn 7, and now around the back part of the circuit. So an action-filled lap so far, and we're not even half done yet.
Yeah, it was a perfect start from Lewis Wedding. He did exactly what he needed to do, which was beat Nangle off the line. Nangle was very tardy off the line. You think as he's gone wide, his teammate Matt Williams is on his outside, and he is Greg Nangle was actually slowed up right. He's being passed by Cameron now as well, so that's a terrible. Nangle must be being very careful as he goes side by side with Cameron.
Yeah, well, Nangle's in a bad position here as he was on the inside for turn 11 but on the outside for turn 12, and he's now dropped all the way down to 6th, and he's right up the backside of Cameron here. And will he have a look at him into turn number 13? And yes, he does. So makes that move stick. And that's Jamie Snow wide. So Jamie Snow very, very wide off the exit of turn 13. So I didn't see what happened to him. But let's cycle back through the field and see if we can pick up what happened to Jamie Snow, because something strange happened to him there. As we bring the replay up, and he was quite comfortably ahead there, and he just went a bit too deep under brakes, and struggling to recover back to the circuit. Now, actually lucky enough to take out one of the brake marker boards there as well, Jamie Snow. So that was the reason for his little off-track excursion.
Just going to say is that Matt Williams, who started from the back of the grid in 10th place, is now in 3rd and on the podium after just one lap. That is one of the best opening laps I've ever seen. He passed cars left and right at the start.
Oh, we've got a spinner at the back. Sorry to cut you off, Bags. We've got a spinner at the back. It's Matt Schwass and Johnny have come together, and we're not sure how that came. We're just caught in the back of shot, but they've now got themselves going again. But it doesn't look like too much damage, but let's see if we can bring that through on the replay for everybody to see what happened here. Johnny was behind Matt and, gave him a bit of a tap from behind. So Johnny just outbraked himself, taps Matt into a spin, and the recovering Jamie Snow manages to scoot through. Luke manages to scoot through, and they get themselves all nicely sorted and
That's
going again.
Good news for Luke, because Matt Schwass is his direct rival for fourth place in the championship. So that's what Luke needs, is those extra points. Also seeing Greg Nangle after his poor start, because by virtue of Jamie Snow going off the track, he's back up to fourth. But closing in on his FCR teammate in Matt Williams.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if team orders will play a part. Matt Williams did say in the last race that if needed, he would move out the way for Greg Nangle, but now that he doesn't have to, you wonder if these two are going to fight each other.
Well, we heard Matt Williams say a bit earlier on before the broadcast started that it was going to be on. As long as Greg secured the title, it was going to be on. Fastest lap for Lewis Wedding, a 1 minute 48.9. So about a second off the pace that we saw in qualifying. But it's Wedding chased by Ott, and Ott's trying to do his best to go with him here. The gap is actually quite stable at just on 1 and a bit seconds. And Ott, on his return to the Formula 3 series, doing his ultimate best to hang on to the back of one of the men who can only be described as a god in some cases. We know that Madbird has a man-love crush on Lewis Wedding and probably watching with vested interest. But he is a very, very talented racer, Lewis Wedding, and doing an excellent job out in front at the moment as he tries to eke out this gap. But it's a bit of hard work for him.
Indeed, and Corey Ott sort of showing us, as he goes a little bit wide there, Corey Ott showing us what might have been. He's definitely got the pace to live with our championship contenders, and it's a shame he wasn't able to make it to all the races.
No, definitely a shame. Real-life commitments, unfortunately, causing Corey Ott to have an absence of 2 rounds here in the Formula 3 Championship. So 2 rounds equating to 4 races, and that's why he's a bit further down the order on the points standings. Wedding's just managed to find a little bit of time here.
Quick note, Cameron has retired and Luke is in the pit lane. So that promotes in the Luke Schwass battle. Schwass is now ahead as Matt Williams.
Yeah, Matt Williams is scooted down the order
He's lost his front wing.
He's lost the front wing. So where's he on the thing? Yeah, he's off the track. He's lost that in a big way. Let's see if we can get a handle on what happened there. No, the replay's not giving us many options here. We're getting a fence. So I don't think we're going to continue with that. As Matt's recovering to the track now.
He had a very, very high speed crash going through, I believe it's turn 11 and 12.
Yeah, look, the 11-12 chicane is where he's coming over. He's now coming down to turn 13 with no front wing. So he's heading for the pit lane. So Matt Williams, after what we talk about his starts and the fact that he is such adept at overtaking cars and gaining places over the course of a race, that he was up 7 positions there, but unfortunately he's come a bit of a cropper, and he's going to tour the pit lane here, and yes, he's going in, so he'll have to replace that front wing. Luke has exited the pit lanes back on track, but he's actually very close to going a lap down here, Bagsy, because Lewis Wedding is only a couple of 100 metres behind as Luke heads up to the turn 11-12 chicane, and Lewis Wedding almost going to be on his hammer rather quickly, I'd imagine.
So Greg Nangle closing in on Corey Ott here. It's less than a second between them now. Be interesting to see how much Greg goes for the overtake here, if he just stays back, because I mean it takes a lot to DNF in these cars. They are fairly resilient, so even if you lose both the front and rear wing, if you make it back to the pits. Oh, Corey Ott set his engine on fire.
Yeah, Ott's on engine on fire. That's not good at all. We saw this in Laguna Seca. It was the story of the Laguna Seca round with engine blow-ups and mistakes galore, which set up the championship finale, but that is a disaster on his return, Corey Ott. And he's not going to make it back to the pit lane here. He's going to have to find a spot to pull over, and that's the end of that chapter for Corey Ott's return to the Formula 3 competition. So Jamie Snow through into third, Johnny through into fourth, Matt Schwass into fifth, and eventually, when Corey retires to the pit lane, it's going to promote Matt Williams back to sixth. And there he goes, a DNF for Corey Ott. That'll move Williams up to sixth and Luke up to seventh once they come back around to that point on the track. But the big winner out of that's actually Matt Schwass as well, because it moves him up to fifth. And in the terms of the points battle, the guys that he's battling with, he's actually about to pass Luke ahead of him on track, and Luke gets out of the way, and that's very good driving. But it puts his nearest rival a lap down, and we will keep abreast of that point situation. But out in front, Lewis Wedding now has a 5-second advantage over Greg Nangle, with just approaching half race distance to go. We're on lap 5 at the moment. It's an 11-lap race, so halfway around lap 6 is technically the halfway point of the race. As we rejoin our race leader, he leads to the tune, we said 5 seconds, but it's actually about 4.5 as the gaps fluctuate a little bit. But he's doing it comfortably at the moment, Lewis Wedding. Lap time around for the two leaders, they were fairly evenly matched. It was Wedding 1/10 of a second faster than Greg Nangle.
While we've got a little bit of a lull in the race, I say that knowing that my current story might get cut off at any moment by something happening because I've said that. We take a bit of a look back at Greg Nangle's season so far. His first 2 races were a 5th and a 10th, which was put him a long way down the order, to be honest, with Heath Dixon winning both races. Nangle was involved in incidents in both those races, which enabled Heath to get the double win there. But since that poor first round, he scored 2 seconds, 2 firsts, and then 2 seconds again in a impressive turn of form, which is honestly what has put him far and away above everyone else. Yeah,
certainly right. And consistency is what will win you championships, as well as the race wins. If you're consistently up in that top 3, you do your points no harm in terms of the amount of points you collect, and therefore you put yourself in the best position possible to win the championship.
This is also how Lewis Wedding is also still in contention. He's either not finished, not started, or been on the podium. He had a DNF and a DNS in the first round, a DNF in the third round, but he won or came third in all the other races. So yeah, he's not one to be trifled with, that's for sure. It was just unfortunate circumstances that got him those DNFs, and DNFs do cost you because you don't get the points for them. That's what Nangle does not have. He has no DNFs.
That's right. Well, we'll have a little bit of a recap in between races as to how the drivers ended up where they are. As Lewis has dropped a bit of time this lap now. He had a little bit of a moment on the exit of, I think it was turn 3 and 4, which dropped him a little bit of time. So the gap has just closed up a little bit. It's now down from about 5 seconds to just around 4, as we'll wait to see Lewis's lap time this time around come into the line. And Greg can see the man ahead. So it was a 51.1 for Lewis and a 50.0 for Greg. So a 1 second lap difference there. And you can see in the background of, when we're looking at Greg, his teammate Matt Williams recovering from that broken front wing. And this is the closest battle on track is probably Snow and Johnny at the moment. So Jamie Snow with a 53.0 that time around, Johnny with a 52.7 recovering after that contact with Matt Schwass. So those guys will close up probably towards the end of this race if Johnny keeps that pace up. So it's not that much difference between the two. It's only 1.8 seconds, and if you can get close enough and get a little bit of a tow, especially down some of these straights, it won't be very long before that battle becomes very, very tasty indeed.
Speaking of closing up, the gap at the front is now only 3.5 seconds, down from 4.5 seconds only a lap and a half ago.
So 2 battles going on for the podium positions, 1 for first and second, 1 for third and fourth. And we've got 2 DNFs so far in this race, Ott and Cameron. As we're negotiating lap 7 of 11. It's gone quickly. quicker than probably what we were expecting, actually. As Johnny's now close right up to the back of Snow, and Snow's got smoke coming from the back of that car. So I'm not sure if that's another engine drama, but I'm not 100% sure what's happening there. But he's still carrying a good turn of speed, and Johnny just having to drop back a little bit. But Johnny gained an enormous amount of time on Jamie Snow through that turn 9 and 10 chicane, and he's a lot closer than he's been over the last lap or two.
That's definitely smoke there.
I'm not sure where the smoke's coming from, if it's an engine drama or if it's something rubbing on a bit of bodywork, but there's no flames just yet, so we assume it's just some sort of panel rub or braking issue as Johnny gets a little bit deep and just loses a little bit of time, so he'll lose that slipstream down this straight now. He was probably getting to a point where he could do it, and still the smoke continues to billow out of the back of that that number, I think it's the number 86 or 88 car of Jamie Snow. You see Matt Schwass there in the background, desperately trying to see if he can close in on Johnny, but not doing, unfortunately. A little bit of a lonely race for him since their tangle, so I think Johnny's sort of become the benefactor out of that particular exchange. And through the turns that Snow has got, doesn't seem to have, well, it's actually through the right-hand bends, he seems to be okay, Jamie Snow, but when he's on the power, it's there's smoke billowing out of the back of that car.
Same thing for Matt Williams as well. He's also got smoke emanating from the back of his car.
Well, we don't want this to turn into a race of attrition, as the gap out in front is also closing up. So let's return to the lead battle, because Greg's still continuing to chip away at Lewis Wedding as the leaders are on lap 8, and that gap has come down rather quickly. It's now only 1.5 seconds. Is Lewis just taking it easy, or is he genuinely got some sort of a drama? He doesn't seem to have a drama, but let's check the lap times as they come through this time. Last time around, Wedding did a 51.2 to Nangle's 50.3, so that's where the time is. Nangle's just taking time out of Wedding hand over fist. Wedding's lap time this time around, a 51.8 to Nangle's 50.1. So this is becoming very much a two-horse race now, and Nangle's got 3 laps to hunt him down.
Sorry, Jamie Snow has retired with that engine issue, and Johnny just had a spin coming into the final corner. So Johnny third, but Matt Schwass a lot closer to him now. And yeah, unfortunately, Jamie Snow retiring.
Well, dangles the carrot in front of Matt Schwass as Johnny, unfortunately. And if Matt Williams and Lewis has got some smoke as well, Bagsy. Lewis has got some smoke as well, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but could it be an issue if they've closed off the radiator ducts too much or something, and the engine's not getting too hot?
Potentially. We do also have time-scaled mechanical failures are time-scaled in this. I'm not sure if that's also what's potentially causing issues here too.
Well, maybe that's why Wedding's taking it easy, because somehow or another, he was getting a drama and had to manage it. So we've seen Ott with an engine failure, Snow with an engine dilemma, and potentially Wedding as well. Did Jamie Snow end up with flames, Bagsy, or did he just pull off into the pits?
I didn't see, no.
All right, well, we'll watch with vested interest as Greg just continues to pace himself here. He's realised that Wedding's got a drama now, and he doesn't need to pull any rash moves. It just depends on how long this can go on with Lewis before it becomes terminal, or if it becomes terminal. Johnny's managed to eke out his gap a little bit more over Matt Schwass since having his little spin at the conclusion of the last lap, but we've got 2 laps to go. Greg's only 1.1 seconds behind as we have a look at Lewis, and his last lap time a 51.6 and a 51.2 for Greg, so he's still closed in a little bit on that lap. I think maybe just
Matt
biding
Williams
his time here.
Has just retired with engine issues as well.
So more engine dramas.
These people, so I don't know if Wedding's engine is going to make the last 2 laps.
I'm chewing my nails here, Baxi, because I don't know what to think. We know that Wedding's got to get points in order for his championship hopes of moving up to second in the championship, and a first or a second place will do no harm. But if he loses an engine, he DNFs. He'll get He'll get 0 points, won't he? Or will he? And Nangle's passed. So Wedding's pulled off.
It's gone.
It's gone. So something's happened. So it's terminal for Lewis Wedding, and that is all she wrote. Unfortunately,
he will be classified though because he has completed 10 laps.
He has completed 75% of the race distance. So we'll let our points maestro Stairs figure that little one out. But the Professor, no engine dramas whatsoever, and he now comes down to the turn 11-12 chicane with a lap and 1 sector to go. And our champion-elect, champion in waiting, is set to become our champion-elect.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate way for the end of the race for Lewis Wedding, as Luke has another spin.
We've got a yellow flag here on circuit 2, just where our leader is. And I'm just trying to see. I can hear the engine running. I'm trying to see where it is, and that's Luke, I think, on the exit of turn 15, just getting out of the way. So now going 2 laps down the race leader. So the Professor, as he is affectionately called, car number 370, and his last lap time that time around was a 53.0, so he can afford to cruise it from here. Commences his final lap for FCR. Schwass and Johnny have closed up again in the background. We're keeping it on the timing screen. They're 30 seconds behind Greg, and we'll keep an eye on that toward the flag. In actual fact, we'll go and have a look at that now because Schwass has leapfrogged Johnny, so positions have been restored as to where they were before they came together at the turn 3 right-hander about 6 or 7 laps ago. And Johnny's not going to let Matt get away in this battle for second and third, the last position, 2 positions on the podium. I'm not sure if Luke will actually, we'll have to keep an eye on Luke to see if he actually passes Wedding for 4th on the road, given Wedding's DNF. As Schwass has gone deep, and Johnny's back through. So Schwass deep at turn 3, and Johnny back through into second place. As we cut back to the Professor now, on his way up to turn 11 and 12. He's in a canter at the moment. His first sector time was a second and a half slower than anything else he's done, but he can afford it. Luckily, no engine dramas for this man. Only 3 corners to go. Turn 14 now. You can see, you can hear it. He's not planning the throttle at all. Last couple of turns. Well, as you pointed out, Bagsy, aside from his first round woes, he has been the most consistent driver across this series, and he comes down to take another race win, and with that, he will be crowned our Formula 3 AMS Oz champion. Great job, Greg Nangle.
Yes, our second champion-elect now, after Brenton Hobson. It was a well-run race for Greg Nangle.
Yep.
He kept the pressure on apart from the start and managed to win the race.
He did. Johnny will be 2 seconds clear of Matt Schwass for second here, as Luke having an engine drama in the background, but he will make it to the line, Luke, so he'll be classified 5th. He was unfortunately 2 laps down, so therefore did not pass Lewis Wedding for 4th, but unfortunately a spate of DNFs, majority of which caused by engine failure. A little bit of a blight on this race, but take nothing away from this man. He got a tardy start, dropped all the way down the field, and worked his way back up to second. And unfortunately, when Lewis Wedding fell off the road with engine dramas, he was there to pick up the pieces, and he sews up the championship. But for Lewis Wedding, we will wait and see what he can do, because if he's able to get that car back out for the next race, I'm not 100% sure if he's able to pass Heath Dixon for second now, Bagsy, because what do they get for a 4th place finish in this championship? It's only about 12 points, I think, isn't it?
4th place finish, yeah, does get you 12 points. I'm just going to need to confirm with our points man Stairs if you get points for a DNF or not, because I have been fed some information that DNFs might be a flat 0 points, but because he did make 90% of the race, and also he finished ahead of Luke as well, who was a lap down. So I think he'll still get those points. And if he does, that puts him 18 points behind Heath Dixon. And so he will need a win in race 2 to be able to make it, to be able to jump Heath Dixon for second in the championship.
Yeah, he certainly will. So Wedding has no choice. If he wants to move up to second in the drivers' standings, he must win the next race, provided they can get that car out. So Greg Nangle with a win in race number 1. He moves on to 145 points and is well clear of Heath Dixon and Lewis Wedding for second and third in the championship. Matt Schwass did his championship position an excellent service. He was fourth in the standings, and he was ahead of Luke, Keane, Ott, and Johnny coming into tonight's race. So his third place finish moves him further clear of Luke, Keane, and Ott, and goes a long way for him sewing up fourth in the championship. But there's still one race to go as we wait for the session to tick over to qualifying 2.
Just an interesting little tidbit is that with that second place for Johnny, he is 16 points behind fourth place Matt Schwass. And if Schwass were to DNF the next race and Johnny was to get another second, then Johnny would take fourth place in the championship.
Well, we'll watch that one with interest as well. Lewis Wedding has been kind enough to give us a little bit of his time in between races. So, Lewis, commiserations. You had a wonderful start and got ahead and led the majority of the race, but some engine dramas toward the end of that race, and we could see it coming with the smoke from the back of the car. But can you talk us through how long it actually took before the engine finally gave up the ghost?
I think it would have taken it took a couple laps. I realised, I think it was lap 9 or 10. I think I realised that there was smoke coming out of the back of my car, and I was wondering why, because I'd run 4, like my engine wasn't overheating. I was checking the temperatures on that all the time. Wasn't smashing down downshifts. I was even really cautious, like towards like lap 5 onwards. I was just taking really cautious with the downshifting and everything. I didn't want to blow it up because I saw what happened in a couple of the other races. And then lap 9 saw the smoke. And I was like, oh geez, better take it easy. So I just took it really, really easy, and it lasted another lap or 2, lap and a half or something, and then it just it gave up, unfortunately.
Well, you're not the only one, unfortunately, to fall victim to some engine dramas. Ott with the same problem. I believe Jamie Snow had some similar dramas, and it's certainly not something that we wanted to see, because the gap was closing up, and obviously you were managing the car and Greg was gaining some time, but it's certainly not the way we wanted the race to end.
No, I was sort of coming to a bit of a climax there. I guess he probably would have wanted to, clinch the championship by, passing me on track or having a battle on track. But and for me, it would have been just a good way to sort of end the F3 season with a win. So a bit disappointing, but hopefully I could rectify that in the second race here.
Yep, we still got one opportunity more to win, or to register another win on the board, and we certainly hope that you give the guys a run for their money, and if you don't win, at least you make it interesting for us.
Yeah, hopefully there's a bit of action on track this time out.
Certainly do. Well, thanks, Lewis. All the best for race number 2, and we'll no doubt speak to you after that.
Cheers, lads. Good luck.
Thank you. We're just waiting for El Chief to get qualifying 2 sorted here. But Bagsy, take nothing away from our champion-elect. He's done a superb job since race 1 of the second round of the series, and he's never looked back.
Yeah, it's He's done very well. He's you can't fault him apart from those first 2 races, which was just bad luck, really, less anything of his own fault. If not for some bad luck, he probably could have been on the podium for every race this season.
Yeah, well, we spoke about the fact that he had a 5th place finish and a 10th place in the first round, and aside from that, he has utterly dominated in terms of consistency since the end of the 2 races in Santa Cruz.
So I'm just getting a word in that perhaps Wedding will not be getting the points for 4th place due to the way we run the points of this series, which I find quite stupid, to be honest. So it seems that Luke, despite not completing as many laps as Wedding, will be in fourth place because you have to be running at the finish to get the points.
Well, if that turns out to be true, it is a most unfortunate thing for Lewis Wedding, because that means he has no hope of moving up to 2nd overall in the standings, which means the absent Heath Dixon will retain 2nd place in the point standings. But we will let our points man Stairs figure that one out in conjunction with El Chief and Brock Harvey, and we'll the points results will be posted on the Facebook page once all is confirmed. Well, it looks like qualifying has finally ticked over, and we will return to the action, as Cameron is the first man out on circuit for qualifying 2. While Cameron's out on the circuit, Bagsy, I just wanted to have a bit of a quick recap. I was planning on putting a little montage together before the races tonight, and as Cam spins, just on the odd chance that obviously Heath and Greg were both expected to be here, and Lewis, just so you could see the kinds of ebbs and flows that happened over the course of the season. But to give everyone a recap of sort of what happened, we had the first 2 races were in Santa Cruz do Sol. Heath Dixon qualified on pole for both races, and we were hoping that he could convert those, but he had tardy starts in both races and actually fell back through the field. But he did doubled up and made 2 race wins by virtue of everybody else ahead of him that had passed him from the start, either falling off the road or coming into contact with each other, and he capitalised on their mistakes. So some would say that was a very, very lucky result for Heath, but it certainly set up his championship run. Then we moved over to Silverstone, and Wedding staked his claim and took a pair of wins and put himself firmly in the championship hunt, and with Greg finishing 2nd in both those races. Greg took both races in Brands Hatch in what was a very, very short but very, very exciting round with using the Indy layout. And then the story of Laguna Seca was engine blow-ups aplenty. There were plenty of people falling off the road by losing their engines, and by virtue of how the cards fell with the race wins there, it set up a 4-point difference between Heath and Greg for the championship. But to our disappointment, a bit of an anti-climax with Heath not being here to take up the challenge.
Yeah, it's unfortunate he wasn't here, but so be it. Would have been nice to see a close finish to the championship, but you can't have everything.
No, you certainly cannot. We're watching Cam Costa before, and he lit it up out of turn 3 and took both his front and rear wings off, so he certainly won't be setting a lap time. But we're watching Jamie Snell at the minute on his outlap on the way down to turn 13, as we have a look through the field and see who is currently setting sector times, so we can get an idea of who we can have a look at. Let's cycle through the field and see if anyone's got any timing up at the moment. Well, Matt Schwass is one of the ones that has some timing up at the moment, as he negotiates turn 4 and is on his way up towards through 5 and now up towards 6 and 7. Luke coming across the start lap. Jamie Snow now starting a flying lap as well. So the only man who's on a flying lap in a minute was Matt Schwass as he goes deep at turn 7. So he certainly will not be setting a time. Let's... where's Jamie Snow in all this? Alright, so Jamie Snow's down at turn number 3. So he's the only man at the moment in a position to set a representative time, and he's in the number 86 car. It looked like an 88 from where I was sitting, but it certainly is an 86. As we've got a yellow flag out for the recovering Matt Schwass at turn 7. Oh! And Cam Costa spins it on turn 8 entrance as well. Hopefully that doesn't affect Jamie Snow's lap. Snow now comes down to turns 9 and 10. Bagsy, what have you got your eye on at the moment?
I've just been going over the points just one more time quickly, and for interest's sake, I'm going to assume that Wedding will be given the points for 4th, because it would just be patently ridiculous otherwise, and that will mean that we have something to talk about in the upcoming race, which will be, can Wedding win the race and beat Heath Dixon for 2nd in the championship? Also, it'll be quite interesting to see who's going to win the pole battle as well.
Yeah, well, it was a very close pole battle for race number 1, with Greg Nangle just shading Lewis Wedding at the death in the session, as you called it, and there was a very, very good lap to get into get down to a 48.7. As Jamie Snow rounds the final turn and comes down to the line, so this is not a quick lap by any means. It's a 51.4, but it is the first lap on the board. I believe that's Luke behind Jamie Snow as well, so we'll see how that goes.
Coming out the final corner, he was on quite the fast lap as well.
Yeah, and Luke sets a lap as well. Jamie Snow pressing on. Matt Schwass is a 2:39, but we know that he ran off the road. Johnny now coming around the final complex of corners, and this is a slower lap as well, so he's probably had a little off somewhere as well. So
Matt Williams is going to set the first actual representative lap time so far.
Yep, so he certainly is setting that at the moment, as Johnny's lap was actually disqualified. And where's Matt Williams? Here he is, coming down to the line, sets a 1 minute 50.0. So probably the first representative time, as you called it. As we have a look through the field, Jamie Snow continuing to push on. Matt Schwass has found some time on his PB this time and has safely negotiated turn 7, now turn 8. As we watch Greg Nangle. So Nangle is down at turn 13. Take a little bit too much curb there, probably for his liking. But let's see what sort of time he can produce.
Just watching Lewis Wedding leave the pits, and he has a very loose car. The back is just stepping out all over the place under power, so I'm not sure if he's taken some rear wing out potentially, but in the pursuit of speed, but he's having some issues warming up the car.
Well, we did talk about rear end stability a bit earlier on, and some of these turns demand it as Nangle goes to the line, does a 50.2, so slots in behind his FCR teammate Matt Williams at the moment, and we're only halfway through this session.
Just to note, the track usage is only light at the moment, so we won't be seeing as faster times as we did in the previous race, because we roll over the server, the track condition gets reset. And so there's a bit less grip out there than these guys we used to before.
Well, that probably explains why the times are in the minute 50 bracket. So if we can get into a minute 40, into the 49s, I think we'll be doing quite well for the track conditions that are out there. But there's only one man out there we suspect might be able to do it, as we watch Nangle improve his own PB by 3.5 tenths, and therefore his own. Actually, Williams is still at the top of the tree, so Nangle was actually 3.5 tenths clear of Matt Williams that time as well. As Johnny goes to the top, and that's a stunning lap. What a time has he done? He's done a 49.3, so we spoke about earlier, as Matt Schwass spins through the grass and Johnny avoids him but also hits the wall. But we spoke about if we could get into the 49s, that we were, with a relatively green track, that we were doing quite well, and Johnny's found a ton of speed and sets the bar very, very high for the chasing pack.
We might be looking at the 48 soon, because Greg Nangle is on quite the fast lap and he's almost half a second up on Johnny's time.
Well, Wedding has commenced his first flying lap. Matt Williams is down at turn 3 and 4. Greg Nangle now coming through turn 14 as we wait and see if he can continue to piece together this lap. So he was purple through sector 1, purple through sector 2, Can he hook it up through Sector 3? Car looks planted around the final turn. Looks very, very good. Rode a lot of curb though. And shoots to the line and into the 48s we go. So Greg gets down to a 48.7. So now we're starting to get some good times on the board. So still a second away from the qualifying 1 results, but we know what happened there when we had a much more rubbered in track. Cameron now coming through the final 2 turns in the number 4 car. Ran the last turn and to the line. This is not going to be a bad time either. So Cameron does a 50.1, so slots into 4th car at the moment. So mixing it in there with Matt Williams at the moment. Let's see if we can find Lewis Wedding, because he was the man that probably where the pole battle was going to be. He's down. He's just negotiated turn 13.
He's not setting the world on fire with this lap so far. He's been down on both sectors on manual.
No, so he's got to put in a time regardless, though, Lewis. If he's going to start, he's got to start somewhere. And oh yeah, you can tell. You were talking about that loose race car before. You can see loose off of that second last turn. He wanted to get on the power, and it didn't agree with him, and he had a fistful of opposite lock to correct it. But he still posts a 49.3, good enough for provisionally 3rd at the moment, but behind Dangle and Johnny, and only a half a second ahead of Matt Williams.
Jamie Snow's set a fast... Actually, no, sorry, he hasn't set a fast first sector. He set a personal best first sector, but it's a second off the front runners.
Yeah, so Jamie Snow down in 6th place at the moment, so he's 2.5 seconds near, or more than 2.5 seconds off an Angle's time as Johnny commences his next flying lap. He will have seen Wedding put down a lap time, even with a little slide at turn number 15, and think to himself, shit, I better get out there, and I better try and put myself another hot lap in, because I don't want to lose a potential front row start. Incidentally, Nangle has come out of the pits. He must have aborted his last lap. You can see there on the timing screens it says a minute 6.2, which means that's the point in time where he aborted the lap. So he's going to have another roll of the dice and see if he can improve on that 48.7 that he set not too long ago.
Got Jamie Snow coming around to start lap. He's going to go up on his personal best, I believe.
So Snow's best lap, he does improve by 1.1 seconds, but does not move any higher, stays 6th. Matt Williams just coming across the line to start another flying lap, so he's still going to have another 1 or 2 laps to improve his time. He's under threat from Cameron too, so Cameron's just ahead of Matt Williams on the road. We've only got 8 runners in this session. Obviously, Rambo electing not to return to the server for second race, and Corey Ott also missing as well after his engine drama, as that car not being rolled out for qualifying for race number 2.
Looking at Jamie Snow, he's improving on his time, but he's not getting too close to the front runners. He's almost a second down just through the first sector. Yep. So this lighter, less grippier track he is struggling with as he goes around, unfortunately. Yeah,
Matt Williams found a little bit of time on his PB in sector 1, but not by a great deal, only 0.061.
The biggest thing about this session could be timing. With the current track usage of light, it could tick over to a medium track usage at any moment, and that does, offer a pretty good increase in your grip and a significant increase in your lap time.
Well, I was going to say it might be happening now, but Matt Williams has gone way, way wide, carried way too much speed at turn 12. That'll be his session done, as he'll have to get out of the pits rather quickly if he wants another lap. Speaking of another lap, Lewis Wedding commences what will be probably one of 2 more bites of the cherry, depending on how he goes this time around.
Matt Williams is leaving the pit lane now.
So
I think he'll make it.
Yeah, with a minute 50 lap time, he'll be very, very close. This man, though, will definitely get 1 if he doesn't butcher the lap, if not 2. So let's see what sort of sector 1 time Wedding can produce. And he's up on his PB by a quarter of a second, and not that far away from the pole sitting time, only 73 hundredths. Down to turn 9 and 10 now.
Oh, Johnny has finally lost his front wing. He was on quite a good lap too, so that's going to put pay to his qualifying session.
So no more laps for Johnny. Weddings looks a little bit more planted. He's not as loose through the turn 9 and 10 chicane. He's still found 6/10 on this lap, but he's still a tenth and a half away from the top time, but this is set to move him up the order to provisionally on the front row.
It's going to be all about this final sector, which is the one he's struggled with the most. The car is very loose, especially in these last two corners, so we don't want to see him overcook it again and hit the inside barrier in the final corner.
Strong through this sector strong through the sector 3 in qualifying 1, but ultimately Greg pipped him at the post. And
Greg's gone faster by half a second, so this lap is not going to be fast.
Well, we missed that. So Greg laying down a very good marker. Wedding comes to the line, and a 48.5 shoots him up the order to second. So he was still 3.5 tenths away from Greg. But Lewis is going to get another lap if he continues to press on. So we'll see if he's fueled for more than one lap. And Greg is just ahead of him on the track, a couple of about 20 seconds up the road, and just over a tenth slower.
Track has just clicked over to medium as well, so these are going to be the fastest laps of the session. There's 10 seconds, and I'm watching Matt Williams at the moment coming up the line to see if he'll make it. There's Cameron right behind him who might make another lap too.
Well, let's see what happens. Matt's not going to make it. The second flag's out, so Matt will not improve. Cameron actually leapfrogs Matt Williams. So Cameron onto the second row of the grid. So he's going to. El Chief will not be happy. Jamie Snow's found nearly 4 tenths on his PB at the moment, so that would put him above Matt Schwass as well, and in the battle with. They'll put him above Matt Schwass and put him in the battle with Matt Williams. So we'll come back to that. Let's have a look where Greg is. Greg's down at turn 13 and gone very, very deep.
Off.
So that's no more improvement for Greg Nangle. Lewis Wedding has found a ton of time, 3.5 tenths on a PB, and he's 12 hundredths quicker than Greg. You called it early, Bagsy. This could be the time to be on the circuit. Nicely negotiated 13. Let's see what Wedding can do. 15's where he's struggled with this car in this qualifying session. We've seen a little bit of tyre smoke out of here, a little locked brake. Yeah, so you got on the power a bit early there, and he just had to manage the throttle a bit. But it looks a lot better around the final curve.
Very close.
This will be very, very close. And he goes to the top with a 48.0. And Jamie Snow lost all that time that he had gained and does not leapfrog up the order at all. But a change of fortunes. Lewis Wedding this time pips Greg Nangle for pole, where it was the other way around in race 1.
Interesting thing there is that Nangle was 2 tenths of a second faster. Oh, sorry, it was 1.12 of a second faster than Wedding in that middle sector, and was on track to go faster in his third sector, but did not quite make it. He went wide, and that's cost him the pole position.
He talked about committing at that turn as well, Bags. He turned 13. It's one of the ones where you got to get it absolutely right and throw the car in there and hope that it sticks. And he just carried way too much speed, and that was the end of that. As soon as he went wide, there was off the curb. There was no way he was going to improve that time. But take nothing away from Lewis. He knows that he's got to get a win on the board to have any hope of getting up to second in the championship. And with that, we're going to talk about it as if he is going to be awarded the points for race number 1, but we will wait to see what happens there. So he's got to get the points on the board before he can plead his case either way.
Interestingly, this is also going to be a race for bragging rights for most wins this season, because both Nangle and Wedding have 3 wins apiece. So the winner of this race, if either of them wins, will have the obviously Wedding won't win the championship, but he could still get the moral victory, let's say, of the most wins in the season.
Yes, it's a very important bragging right, as you rightly pointed out. Most wins in the season. So the current standings for wins in the season, Heath Dixon's got a pair, and we got Wedding and Nangle. They have is it 4 each? Is it? I believe
3 apiece.
3 apiece. So they have 3 apiece.
And Sam Dunstall has the one other win.
That's right.
So that'll be That I mean, if I'm not sure if they know about it, but if they do, it'll be playing on their minds for sure.
Well,
And we've got them both on the front row, so it'll be a straight fight between the two.
yes,
Hopefully, we have no
certainly.
engine dramas causing issues again.
Well, I think fingers will be crossed and legs will be crossed and everything will be crossed, so we do not have any dramas.
It's because it's not what the viewers want to see. They want to be able to see these guys racing. It's this is sim racing. It's not really a team sport. It's more an individual sport, and we don't want things like reliability playing into it really.
No, it's not something that we've seen a great deal of, as I'm just watching the MotoGP while we wait for this and seeing a bike on fire. So they're a timely discussion about to emerge about reliability. But we don't see a great deal of reliability issues in the sim racing series that we run. But when it does happen, it tends to happen in quite large in a group, I should say. It's like the old saying they say, bad things always tend to happen in threes, and we had at least three in that race.
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, we've got 5 minutes to fill in a little bit of time here before the race 2 gets underway. So just a reminder, I guess, to all of our viewers that this is the final race of the Formula 3 season. There's still a couple of seasons left to go to run their course. So the Supercars series for AMS Oz will continue to run till the end of the year. The Porsches in the Super Series not that far away from finishing up, and the GT3 has still got 3 more rounds to go over the next 3 Sundays. But there's a whole host of new races and new series that will be coming in the coming weeks, starting from I think it's late July or early August. We spoke about the Formula 1 series before, the Super Series moving over to the Mitsubishi Lancer format, Porsche Cup getting its own cup, GT3 becoming a WEC style series, and there's also a few things coming up such as Formula V and also an oval racing series that Matt Williams is putting together, which kicks off with an Indy 500 endurance race, which a number of guys are looking forward towards. So stay tuned to the Facebook page for all that information, as all will be revealed in the coming weeks.
Yeah, we've got about 3.5 minutes left in practice, so might be time just to have a look to the championship table and just see what else can happen in this final race. We're presuming Lewis is getting the points for 4th in the last race, which means a win is what he needs to get across the line to beat Heath Dixon. 2nd place won't do it. He will fall 1 point short if he gets 2nd place. The battle for 4th is also an interesting one. Matt Schwass, Luke and Johnny all in with a shot. Johnny needs to win or get 2nd with a DNF from Schwass. And it's the same for Luke as well. And Schwass obviously just needs to finish ahead of those other two. Further back down the field, we've got Matt Williams, if he wins the race, can jump up to 7th spot, overtaking David Keane. And also, no, Coriott's not in this one, so that won't come into play, unfortunately. Just have a look at some of the more consistent people. Luke has got no podiums. The best position he's got is 5th, but he's still 5th in the championship. He's finished every single race, so it's very well done by Luke.
Yes, as we spoke about consistency, awards, results, and even though he's not been able to make it onto the podium, just by virtue of finishing every race, picking up points, he's continued to chip away, and finds himself where he is in the order, which is good to see. And he's one of those, Luke's one of those younger guys that's come into the series, still finding his feet with the cars that he's been driving, and much the same as a number of other drivers, especially in the Rookie Cup as well. They've come in and they want to start somewhere, and you know, eventually they'll get better with time. But even yourself and myself, Bagsy, when we first started doing sim racing, which we do with the ARW boys, you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to learn from your mistakes, and ultimately that's what makes you a better racer.
Exactly right, and obviously I've had one go in an AMS Oz race, and it was the Lancers, and I did absolutely terribly, and then my internet died. I later found out that my profile had reset all my assists, so I had braking help and steering help on, which ironically makes the cars worse to drive. But I'm not quite on the level of these guys. You're obviously a bit better than me and are going to have a go in the F1 series, and it's going to be interesting to watch your progress.
Well, I'll aim not to disappoint, let's put it that way.
Even if he's giving it a go in those 98 cars, they're going to be difficult to drive, and just being included in the field is a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah, to be alongside the likes of Lewis and Corey and those guys that are very, very quick, it'll be good to match myself against or compare myself to how all those guys go. A couple of seconds now remaining in warm-up as we see Lewis come out onto the track and taking liberties with the turn 1 grass there. And we're not far away now from race number 2 and the final race of this series.
Yeah, it's a bittersweet moment almost. It's been quite fun commentating this series, and it will be a shame to see it go. Obviously, we're getting an even more premium motorsport open wheel category, so
yep.
With the Formula 1 98s, which will be just as exciting. I believe we'll be coming back here to Melbourne for the first round as well.
Yes, that is definitely on the cards. Well, while we wait for the drivers to grid up, Bagsy, just a question without notice. Your favourite moment in the Formula 3 series?
Let's say you've definitely put me on the spot, but I think it's got to be Heath Dixon winning in the first 2 races. They were both times they were very unexpected after poor starts from him, and he kept it on the road and just watched everyone in front of him fall off the road. And it was so unexpected to see that string of incidents happen to the 4 or 5 people who were in front of him. So for me, that's the one that sticks out the most for me.
I concur. I was going to say exactly the same thing, and for it not only to happen once but twice in 2 races in that round is completely unexpected. Well, the cars are on the grid. We've got 8 runners. We are away on formation laps, so let's take you through the field. Lewis Wedding takes his second row. I'm mincing my words here. He takes his front row start from race number 1 and takes it from second spot to first spot. So a switch of positions for Lewis in this race. Greg Nangle took pole in race number 1 and won race 1 and with it the championship, and he starts alongside Lewis Wedding for race number 2. Johnny had a good qualifying session and set the early benchmark for this particular race, but he starts from the 3rd row of the grid. Cameron had a decent qualifying session as well and had a late leapfrog up the order, bypassing Matt Williams, who I'm sure will be filthy when we have a chat to him in commentary a bit later on. Speaking of Matt Williams, he is in 5th position and starts this race on the 3rd row alongside Matt Schwass. So Matt Schwass battling it out with Johnny for honours in the middle of the field. The only real positions that can change hands, along with Lewis and Heath. Jamie Snow has not made, I'm not sure if he made the grid or if he has gone back into the garage, but he's ultimately in the garage now, and Luke will come around and he is slated to take the 8th position, but we'll see if Jamie Snow actually takes the start, or if he manages to, or if he's completely out of proceedings. Just judging by the timing that's on the screens, I dare say he was out there for the race start, but may have had some sort of issue and may not take the start. But we'll wait and see. as everybody comes around the last couple of turns.
We've got nothing saying he's left the server, so he's potentially still in here.
Greg
So
and sorry, Bagsy. Greg and Lewis have just skipped away a little bit from the field on the formation laps, so they're going to be waiting a little bit longer than everybody else. But no sign of Jamie Snow out of the pit garage just yet.
Oh, there we go. Jamie Snow's coming out now.
Okay, so he will take the start, but he will be starting from the pit lane.
That's going to be a very long wait for him at the end of the pit lane there.
No, certainly will, and it won't be any good for his tyre pressures or his temperatures because they'll all be dropping, and he will definitely be on very cold. Lewis Wedding angling towards Greg again. So
he knows what's going to happen, and he knows he wants to block him. So Wedding, he knows who he has to beat.
Yes, he does. Well, we wait with vested interest as the lights come on. 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go! And Lewis gets a reasonably good start. Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid, and he's tucks in behind Lewis Wedding here. Lewis covers the inside, and Greg's on the outside. Johnny getting a decent start as well. They take a little bit of curb and they go off, but Greg's rounded up. Lewis Wedding on the outside on the run to turn 3.
That's Matt Williams, who's gone around the outside.
Matt Williams.
Wide. Matt Williams has gone from 5th to 1st in 2 corners. That is an unbelievable start from Matt Williams.
What a start from Matt.
I've never seen a start like that in any of the AMS Oz races that I've watched. That is unbelievable.
Well, he did say it would be on, and he wasn't lying. He's moved up 4 positions from the start of the race, and he leads the final round of this, or the final race of this series. And
Jamie Snow just coming out the pits now.
Yep, so Snow coming out of the pits after being given the green light, a full sector behind everybody else. Cameron has also leapfrogged Greg Nangle as well up into 3rd place, having started 4th. I think Greg was having a look down the inside of Cameron there, but he doesn't make the move stick. Greg doesn't need to do anything special as Luke spins at the back at turn 9.
That's not going to help Luke in his quest for 4th in the championship whatsoever.
Greg's monstering the back of this number 4 car through turns 11 and 12. Johnny's trying to do his best to hang with Greg as well, so we've got a little 3-car battle going on here for 3rd, 4th and 5th, and Lewis is putting Matt Williams under some pressure out in front as well.
Yeah, he's forced Matt to go very defensive there.
And he's through, on the inside.
Making Wedding go a long way around, but Wedding now has the inside for the penultimate corner, so Wedding looks like he has this position made, and he is...
Well, Matt's going to have the inside for 16 here, so... Good racecraft.
Oh,
little touch.
There's a good save from Matt Williams, but now they are very close.
Look at this, they're chasing each other.
By a 1/10 of a second,
They're chasing each other across the road as they fan out as well, and Cam's got looking for an inside move here as well, as Greg rounds him up on the outside, and Johnny rounds up Cam as well, so this is a great exchange, and this is what we were hoping to see in race number 1. And we were hoping Heath was going to be here for this, but we're certainly going to be not short of action. As Johnny has a look on the inside of Greg Nangle at turn 3, but he can't make the move stick. And these 5 or 6 cars are line astern, and Matt Schwass is closing on this battle now, and they're certainly giving us a show for the last round, Bagsy.
Yeah, they certainly are. It was Jamie Snow spinning up his tyres into the final corner is what caused all these guys to back up together. And
Lewis Wedding, you mean?
Certainly. Yeah, sorry, Lewis Wedding. And Lewis Wedding is now under massive pressure from Greg Nangle, because Greg Nangle going to have a look here. He decides against it.
Matt Williams is across the grass. Matt Williams across the grass and just wants to rejoin. It's a massive accident. What a massive accident has happened there. And it's taken out both the FCR cars. Oh, my goodness gracious me.
Both FCR cars without a front or rear wing. That is just absolutely devastating.
Well, we've gone to the replay here. Let's just have a look at what happened. So Matt Williams was out in front, just got a little bit too deep as he comes back across the grass, completely lost it and just sidestepped, and he's actually wiped out Johnny's front wing as well. So what a disaster for the FCR team. They are going to have to both tour the pit lane for repairs, as I believe Matt Williams and Johnny's actually retired as well. So that's hard luck for both the FCR cars. We did say Matt Williams was going to be on with it,
also.
and Matt's retired as well. So Greg's continuing on, but Lewis is comfortably out in front. Cam is defending from Matt Schwass. Luke is a bit further back. Greg, I believe, has Luke has spun around off the exit of turn number 15. Greg's just coming around now with no front wing and no rear wing, so he'll make it back to the pits. But we've lost Johnny, we've lost Matt Williams. Jamie Snow's been promoted to 6th. Bagsy, I'm losing my voice. Wow.
That just all kicked off very suddenly, and it was Matt Williams losing it that caused it, because the cars were all so close. Matt Williams will be very disappointed, but I think he'll be even more disappointed, maybe Heath Dixon, if he watches this back later, thinking what might have been, because if he'd just participated in the first race and then this happened to his main rival, would have been an easy championship win. Well, and also Lewis Wedding will be wistfully wishing that it was Greg Nangle's engine that had blown up and not his, because that would have made this a very close battle.
Well, let's not count our chickens before they hatch. It's lap 3, and we started to see Lewis's engine go around sort of lap 8 in the previous race, and we hope it doesn't happen this time. But that being said, anything is possible, and race 1 certainly showed it. Well, we're watching the battle between Cam and Matt Schwass at the moment, because that's the closest battle that's on track. Lewis Wedding's just managing the gap out in front. In actual fact, Cam and Matt can see Lewis just off in the distance.
Greg is out of the pits now with a new front and rear wing, but he is 40 seconds down on the next person, who is Jamie Snow.
Yeah, so he's quite comfortably ahead visually on track of Lewis Wedding to avoid being lapped, but obviously too far behind to make a difference. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bagsy, but I don't think we've ever seen the safety car in this series, have we?
No, safety car's never been out in this series.
So despite the massive accident, there was no safety car called. As the fastest man, as Jamie Snow is actually setting a very, very decent time. As we just cut back to see what he's up to, because he was lighting the timing screens up through sector 2 as Luke's off the road there again at turn 15. Jamie Snow passes him for 4th place. Let's see what sort of lap time Jamie Snow was setting. Here he comes. And his lap time is a 51.3, so just to give you an idea of the kind of pace that these guys are doing. In race 2, Jamie Snow just set his best lap. Let's return to the battle toward the front. Lewis Wedding's dropping time to these guys at the moment, so I'm not sure if that's just a case of he's managing his engine. He doesn't want it to explode after what happened last time, but Cameron and Matt Schwass are definitely closer than what they were, and they're honing in on Wedding. So I'm not sure if they're working together with the slipstreams to try and hone in on Wedding, or if Wedding's just managing the gap, but it's certainly a lot closer than what it was, Bagsy.
Yeah, he's dropped about a second and a half to them. I think he might just be managing his engine and trying to keep it a bit cooler, as we see Cameron sliding his way through turn 14, I believe that is, and Matt Schwass still very close to him. The other battle we were talking about between the 4th place, Schwass is poised to take it now that Johnny has retired. Johnny needed a 2nd place there to secure it. But if Schwass doesn't finish this race, then Luke will potentially take 4th place. So Schwass can't rest on his laurels just yet as he goes around the outside. Cameron just seemed to have let Schwass through. So
yeah, it's a bit of an unusual move.
I think that Schwass is faster than him and has a chance at getting Wedding.
Well, that's a possibility, so we'll wait to see what happens there, because Wedding's just kicked away a little bit now, so he's got 3.5 seconds now as opposed to 2.5 it was a few moments ago. I actually thought that Cameron was moving over to the left to try and break the slipstream, as Matt was very, very close, but obviously giving up the ghost here. But these guys are still continuing to battle away, and I think that you could be right, Bagsy. If Cameron thinks that Matt Schwass has got half a chance of catching Wedding, he'd rather let Matt go and then try and keep up with the slipstream and see if they can both get there, because maybe it was hampering their opportunities. But you can see that the gap now to Lewis Wedding's kicked away to nearly, or it was over 4 seconds, but as the timing screens fluctuate, it's sitting around the 4 and a bit seconds mark.
I've seen Luke spin again at the penultimate corner. He's been having a lot of issues just with that corner, this weekend, unfortunately, as he comes into the pits now.
Yep. And
so not sure what's happening there, but Greg Nangle's going to come through and take 5th place from him.
yeah, and Greg's actually, Lewis is setting some good times, and Greg was also setting a good time on the lap around as well. So it'll be interesting to see as Greg sets the fastest lap of a 50.5. So definitely showing what sort of pace that he had if he was still up the front. But Lewis is also setting a very, very quick time as well. So let's just go up the front and see what sort of time that he can set, because he's been pulling out that gap over the second place car, Lewis Wedding, and still continuing to streak away and down to the line. What sort of times Lewis got in him? And he sets a 50.4, so not that much quicker than Greg, but they're within a tenth of each other as Luke's exiting the pits, comes out safely behind the race leader and ahead of the battle for second and third.
So I'm guessing Lewis Wedding may have just had a scruffy lap, or the previous lap before he set the fastest lap, or maybe he just needs to text someone or go grab a drink or something, because he's back to his streaking away from the next 2 ways.
Well, he's certainly not going off to get donuts as he did in one of the, I think it was the Super Series race, where he had to go off and get some donuts for another member of the household. So certainly it must have been a very important household member.
It is for sure, to miss out on a points-paying race. It must have been.
Yeah, Matt Schwartz is dropping away from Wedding here. I think Wedding's found his groove now and comfortably in the zone, with lap 6 being negotiated now. They're about halfway around lap 6.
Which means we're at the halfway point of the race, and Cameron is still... He's hounding Matt Schwartz quite a bit, so... Not sure, because Cameron did let Schwartz through quite easily, so... Now that it's interesting that he's still managed to hang on to the back, because they're not catching... As Greg Nangle drops into the 149s by 4 thousandths of a second.
Yeah, so now the honours are going to be for that that fastest lap, given Greg is too far in arrears to be able to challenge for the race win. It will likely be Wedding having the moral victory, as you put it, Bagsy, having more race wins than anybody else, despite not winning the championship. Bragging rights.
Also, another point for bragging rights is the fastest lap battle. Wedding had the fastest lap in race 1 here at Albert Park, and that puts him on 4 fastest laps, and Greg Nangle has 3. So if Greg Nangle can't win the wins battle, he might try and win, or tie at least, the fastest laps battle.
It will be a small victory if he can manage to do that. But Matt Schwartz has now got a decent margin on Cam behind. He's eking it out. It's out to 1.5. It's just getting a little bit more than 1.5 seconds now. He's not making any inroads on Wedding, is Matt Schwartz. So that gap is now stabilised for the moment around about the 6.8 second mark. We'll see if it's
dropped off from Schwartz as well.
Yeah, he has. There's no real battles going on track at the moment.
Luke's lost his rear wing somewhere, I believe, coming into the first corner, so he's going to have to tour around quite slowly without that.
Yeah, we spoke about the troubles that he was having through turn 15. He was not the only person to have troubles at turn 15. We saw Wedding lighting it up there during qualifying, and when trying to put the power down with a loose rear end of that race car, it certainly didn't want to agree with him. It can be a tricky circuit, this. There's turn 15 we've been speaking a lot of. Turn 16 is where they were also having some troubles with in practice before the circuit rubbered up. As another turn there, turn 13, Matt Schwartz just goes a little bit offline, but no harm done. But there are a number of turns on this circuit, Bagsy, where you need to commit, and there are a number of turns where you need to have patience. And some of the drivers at some points in time don't tend to have either.
Yeah, it is a track that rewards you for attacking, but it will also take a big bite out of you if you attack too hard. So it's all about finding that balance between attacking in some places and being prudent in others. And
speaking of being prudent, here we're still watching this Matt Schwartz and Cameron Costa battle, and that gap is now stabilised at about 1.6, 1.7 seconds. Wedding is continuing to kick on out in front. Actually, let's go and have a look at our race leader and see what he's up to. So here he is on lap 8, and I hope he's not going to kill me if I put the Moz on him, because I'm too far away from where he is. But no smoke signs out of the back of that car yet, which is a good thing.
At this point last race, the smoke was coming out well and truly at this point. So I think even if it does start smoking out, he will probably still be okay to make it to the end.
Well, he's coming up to turn 11 and 12 now. As Luke's now gone 2 laps down, and I think he was actually on the inside of turn number 11. Yeah. It just flashed past so quickly I couldn't tell. I couldn't quite picture it, but he definitely was there. And so now Luke has gone 2 laps down, but still circulating, therefore still going to acquire some points. But when this man's on, Bagsy Lewis Wedding, he's on. And we've seen this over all the series that he runs. He ran in the GT3s. He was shooting for 4 wins in a row at Sebring before not only the weight penalty for the Lambo, but also the issues that cropped up on that night. But he certainly was quick in the Porsches, but not as quick as our eventual champion, Brenton Hobson. He's definitely showed his hand in this category as well, with 3 race wins, and now at this stage set to be a 4th. And in the supercars as well, he's no slouch either, but has had his fair share of dilemmas.
Yes, I seem to remember at I forget the track, but I seem to remember him sliding off and ending up stuck in a divot in one of the tracks, I believe, for several laps.
Yeah, he did get himself a little bit stuck at one of those circuits. I can't remember what the circuit was either, but you know, you take the good with the bad, and more often than not, for this man, it tends to be good. I wouldn't say always good, but it tends to be good.
I think it was it Hidden Valley?
Hidden Valley, in the supercars, he did have some issues. I think it was on the supercars. Sorry, Hidden Valley in the Porsche series, he did have some issues with the overdriving of the car when he was chasing Hobson, but I don't think it was Hidden Valley track.
Okay.
It may have been the Phillip Island track, but we'll...
Barbagallo.
Barbagallo.
Information was Barbagallo. Thank you to Matt Williams, who is obviously watching it. Oh, Wayne's on
wide. He's gone very, very wide. That's at turn 13. He's actually spun around, but thankfully
it
looks...
was a very, very lucky spin. He could have ended up very much in the wall there.
Yeah, no damage, but certainly a lot of gravel and grass on those tyres. Let's go back and have a bit of a look at what happened to Wedding here. Let's go on with the onboard. Here he is. Just carried too much and outbraked himself and kept it well out of the wall. Good job, Lewis Wedding.
Did a perfect 360 and continued on like he meant to do it.
That's right.
Just an update for people following LMP1. They are now on the final lap, and the Toyota hasn't slowed ground to a halt this time. So we'll see if they make it round the whole final lap.
Yeah, approaching 11 o'clock local time here, so that's about the time. That's the time they kicked off last night. So not far away there. MotoGP also over as well. So unfortunately, this will be the last bit of racing for the night that most of us will see. But on the penultimate lap is Lewis Wedding. That little spin has cost him some time, but time not significant enough for Matt Schwass to be able to catch back up to him. And Matt Schwass, if we look down the order, is still stabilised a gap to Cameron behind of 1.5 seconds. So wondering whether or not Cam was a wise move to let him back through there, because if this gap has managed to stabilise, he probably could have defended for a while. But probably, you're right, you might have been right, Bags. He took the view that maybe that Matt was a little bit quicker and potentially could get out there after Wedding. But in hindsight, now looks like a battle that he should have defended.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of, was it Jamie Whincup? No, sorry, not James Courtney potentially letting someone by at the Clipsal 500 this year into the hairpin quite easily, and that ending up costing them the race win. They let by Shane Van Gisbergen.
Well, Wedding coming around the last turn now for the penultimate time and about to start the final lap. Now Luke has been put 3 laps down, so he's in between Wedding and Schwass here, as we can see all of our top 3 on the main straight. Take nothing away from Lewis. He's had a very, very good series in the F3s, despite a little lock up there, despite the dramas that came about in the last race and his DNF and DNS in in round number 1. He actually did have some technical gremlins. Oh, he goes very wide across the curb there. He did have some technical gremlins at Brands Hatch as well, which didn't contribute too well to his cause, having some wheel dramas, if memory serves me correctly. But still managed to get out there and get some points. So he kept himself in the fight for as long as he possibly could. Unfortunately, the lack of points from round number 1, race number 1 and 2 in round 1, has ultimately seen his challenge been somewhat distant and relegated to battling for second place in the championship with Heath here. So we assume that he will get the points for race number 1. He's certainly going to get the points for the victory here for race number 2 with only a handful of turns left to go. But your points master Stairs will calculate all and put on the Facebook group to confirm everything. But 3 turns to go for Lewis Wedding.
Oh, it looks like the Le Mans 24 Hours is going to finish at the same time as our wonderful race here, as Lewis Wedding comes through the final corner to take the win and second place in the championship. Well raced, avoided the carnage, and he also takes the trophy for most wins this season. So well done, Lewis Wedding.
He certainly does. Matt Schwass will come through for an excellent second place. Take nothing away from him. Cameron's had a bit of an issue somewhere around the lap, and he's dropped back from Matt Schwass. So that's his best result in Formula 3. And also best result in Formula 3 for Cam as well. So congratulations to top 3, especially the second and third place guys. Their best results in this series. Jamie Snow's just come off the exit of turn number 12, heading down to turn 13. And he's actually... Oh, he's not a lap down, sorry. That's the timing screens. He's on the final lap as well. Greg's only about 9 and a bit seconds behind Jamie. So we'll wait for these guys to cross the line.
Closed in that gap very well, because that was 22 seconds only about 4 laps ago.
Yeah, we would have had fresher tyres as well as the new wings, and nothing to lose really, Greg. He'd sign up the championship in race number 1. Jamie takes a bit too much curb off of the last turn and puts a bit of a rooster tail. So a 4th place for Jamie Snow and a best lap of a 51.3. And our champion-elect finishes 5th after collision with his teammate, and his best lap was a 49.9. So he's the last of the classified finish. Luke actually DNF toward the end of that race. He was 3 laps down, so it'll be interesting to see if he will accrue points for that. But the last of the cars to cross the line was Greg. But your race winner, there he is. Well, now he's got an engine dilemma. So take nothing away from him. He gets the points for the race win, and we assume will be second in the championship after this. But he takes out the moral victory for most race wins in a season.
Yeah, it was good work there from Lewis Wedding. He controlled that race, not quite from start to finish, but certainly after Matt Williams got into his teammate, he kept the gap there. Had that one small mistake in the final sector, but handled it well. Stayed calm despite spinning across the gravel, and got himself the win.
He certainly did. We're waiting to see if any of the gents elect to join us in the commentary box. I know that Matt Williams is sitting in here. I'm not sure if he's around, but he certainly listened to the broadcast. Actually, in fact, he is here. So, Matt, we want to get a little bit of a lowdown from you if we can. First of all, your start was absolutely amazing, and the pass on Lewis Wedding around the outside of turn 2 was absolutely brilliant. But what happened on lap 2 when you ran across the grass? You just ran a little bit deep, just braked a bit too late. Talk us through that accident.
Coming out of the last corner, I think there was a little bit of contact with Lewis, so I was going to go a bit deeper under brakes, and did so there, and remembered the engine went in race 1, so rather than grabbing another gear and trying to get it to turn in, I just elected to run a little bit wide, and the back jumped around a bit, and I was a passenger from then on.
Well, passengers certainly ruined your race and put Greg out of contention as well for the race win. So I think Greg gets potentially gets the fastest lap for the race. So therefore, the fastest lap battle's all tied up nicely. But that battle was heating up rather nicely until the unfortunate accident. But good to see that you've lost none of your ability to pass cars off the line or pass cars over the course of a race, because we see it week in and week out from you. You always seem to progress up the order from wherever you start. Not the best qualifier, but you can certainly make it up during the race.
I just wish I could qualify.
I think a number of us do as well, but you certainly give us definitely some entertainment value. Lewis,
thanks, mate.
You've been gracious enough to give us some of your time as well. So, congratulations on the win. You didn't have it your own way off the start. Tell us about the start and Matt's pass on the outside at turn 2.
Well, I thought I got another decent start again. But obviously, Matt got a pretty good start, and I had the run into turn 1. I just outbroke myself a little bit, so I understeered a little bit wide, and that forced Greg wide, and obviously it gave Scruff a good opportunity to get a run, and he sort of under and overlapped me and sort of just got ahead, and then had a good battle there for a lap and a half. I'm sorry, I did give him a bit of contact coming out of the last turn. He got a little bit, just the line he took, he had to, it was a bit shallower, so he couldn't quite carry the speed, and I couldn't hit the brakes at that point. I was too close to him, so I gave him a nudge, and then that allowed Greg and I think Cameron to close us up. It was 4 wide into the first turn there.
Yeah, it was certainly a high entertainment value for 2 laps. I mean, you all the top 5 chased yourselves across the road on the run down into turn number 1 on lap number 2, and we certainly I nearly lost my voice calling that. I was so excited. I was hoping that the battle was going to rage on for a few more laps at least, but unfortunately the accident put pay dirt to that. But we'll take nothing away from you. You've earned the points that you needed to earn from that race, and we assume that you're going to get the points for race number 1. We'll wait for Stairs to confirm all of that, but at this stage you look set to have jumped Heath by a couple of points. I think, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Bagsy, it's only going to be 1 point, isn't it? If the points are paid as we expect them to be paid.
2 points for the
2 points.
Yeah. So, well, it's just a bit of a shame, obviously, with that battle ending. All I saw was that Scruff sort of ran a little bit wide going into, I think, 9-10 or that chicane, and he, from my view anyway, when he was sort of trying to get back on safely, he must have just gassed it a little bit. I saw him initially lose it, and then I got past him, and all I saw in my mirrors was a literal explosion of wings and wheels and everything in my mirrors.
Yeah, it certainly didn't make for good viewing. It actually took not to take out Matt, and Greg having to tour the lane, but it also took out Johnny as well. So that settled a couple of battles in terms of the points. It obviously, Greg taking the title in race number 1. It's now settled the battle for second position in your favour if it goes the way we expect it to go, and it's settled, I believe, 4th as well, hasn't it, Bagsy, with Matt Schwass jumping up the order and by virtue of Johnny's DNF securing that position in the standings.
Yeah, Matt Schwass has finished, guaranteed him 4th place by a significant margin in the end, 23 points.
Yeah, so he had a very good round, Matt Schwass. We'll take nothing away from Matt and from Cameron as well. Their best results in the Formula 3 series coming at the last race, and good to see those guys up there doing well. Well, that is the end of the Formula 3 series in AMS Oz, and it'll be replaced, as we said earlier, by Formula 1 coming in July. But a look ahead to what's coming up. And Supercars makes its long-awaited return after a 3-race hiatus. As you guys are aware, the Supercars follows what happens with the Supercars in real life, and that means Thursday 21st of June we'll be at Hidden Valley. Second time we've been there this year, or this season. We were there for the Super Series a little while ago. GT3 continues in a week's time from the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. That will be round 7 of 9, and that championship is closing up quite nicely as well. There are 7 drivers separated by about 13 or 14 points at the top of the standings there. And as we said a little bit earlier, Super Series, the champion there has already been decided with Brenton Hobson taking out the title, but the final race of the Super Series season is Thursday week, so Thursday a week and a half away, and it's the old favourite, Mount Panorama in Bathurst, and we expect quite a rather large turnout for that one. It always seems to bring a lot of people out of the woodwork. Bagsy, sorry, go on. You go.
Yeah, it's definitely a favourite of everyone. If you like, I'll just quickly go through the final point standings for the season.
Sure.
We have Greg Nangle, our new F3 champion, finished on 156 points with 3 wins and 7 podiums total. Lewis Wedding ended up 33 points behind, 123 points. He podiumed in every race bar one that he finished, so that was a very good show from Wedding. Heath Dixon didn't unfortunately come to the final round, so wasn't able to compete for the championship. He finishes 3rd. Matt Schwass in 4th and Luke in 5th. We have Johnny, David Keane, Corey Ott, Baker and Matt Williams rounding out the top 10. It's a bit of bad luck from Matt Williams. He DNF'd his last 4 races, which is unfortunate.
Wow. Well, that'll cost you the points right there, won't it?
It will. Just quickly going back down the field, a few quick mentions. We had Sam Dunstall join us for 1 round, and he podiumed in both races. Cameron scoring his best result in the final race with a 3rd. And Rob Dunt, who we only saw for 1 round as well, but got a podium as well in there. So we ended up having 26 drivers total competing over the course of this series. So thank you to everyone who was involved in the series. It's been great to watch you all race.
Certainly has. And by all means, as we say from time to time on the broadcast, guys, get involved. Well, that is the end of the AMS Formula 3 Championship, and we will see you on Thursday for Super Series. But until then, as always, please drive safely.